Jeffrey Epstein did not build this alone. He was a financier with no real business, a billionaire with no clear source of wealth, and a criminal who kept escaping justice. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't powerful. He was protected. And the people protecting him were far more dangerous than the crimes he committed. Jeffrey Epstein did not rise. He appeared. One day, he was a college dropout with no credentials. The next, he was advising billionaires, managing fortunes, and moving through the highest circles of American power as if he'd always belonged there. No one could explain where his money came from. No one could trace the source of his wealth. No one could identify the institution that made him a financial mastermind. Because there wasn't one. Epstein's empire was built on access to politicians, CEOs, tech founders, royalty. He cultivated them, charmed them, studied them, then used what he learned to build connections that normal people could never reach. On the surface, he played the role well. The intellectual, the philanthropist, the advisor to the ultra-rich, a man who spoke effortlessly about science, economics, and global policy. But beneath that carefully constructed persona existed another world, a private network of mansions, islands, aircraft, and shell companies, all operating like a hidden machine designed for one purpose: recruitment, control, secrecy. Epstein lived two lives simultaneously, the public face of wealth and influence, and the concealed architect of one of the most coordinated sex trafficking operations in modern history. And the closer you get to understanding how he built it, the more you realize he never could have done it alone. Because a man with no degree, no banking background, and no legitimate track record does not climb into the highest tiers of global power by accident. He is placed there, and Act 2 begins with the question no institution wants to answer. If Epstein was the front, then who built the machine behind him? Jeffrey Epstein did not rise because he was brilliant. He rose because powerful people decided he was useful. To understand his operation, you have to understand the system that formed around him, an ecosystem of influence that shielded him, elevated him, and for decades made him untouchable. Epstein's circle wasn't accidental. It was engineered. He cultivated billionaires, politicians, intelligence-linked operatives, diplomats, corporate titans, and world leaders. He connected them, leveraged them, and studied them. People called him a financier, but no one could point to a real business, no investment portfolio, no audited fund, no public record of legitimate wealth creation. Yet he lived like a shadow oligarch. Private jets, islands, townhouses worth tens of millions, a global network of assistants, fixers, attorneys, pilots, and intermediaries, all paid for by money that came from places no one could fully explain. When investigators later tried to trace it, the financial trails dissolved into shell companies, trusts, and offshore structures designed to disappear themselves. And the deeper they looked, the stranger it became. Because everywhere Epstein went, intelligence footprints followed. Former spies in his social circle, a partner with direct ties to foreign intelligence agencies, unusual access to diplomatic circles, a pattern of protection that resembled national security shielding, not ordinary wealth. People noticed. They asked questions. But the questions went nowhere. Every time his name landed in a government office, something happened. A file went missing, a prosecutor backed off, a case was reduced, a witness changed direction, a higher authority intervened. It wasn't luck, it was structure. Epstein was a node in a larger architecture, an intersection where wealth, intelligence, and influence converged. He collected information on powerful people. He created situations where secrets were shared, and secrets, in the right hands, are leveraged. Some called it a social circle, others called it a trap. But whatever it was, it gave Epstein the one thing that mattered in a world built on power: protection. The kind of protection that survives scandals, the kind that rewrites investigations, the kind that lets a man walk between raindrops while everyone else gets soaked. And that protection didn't end because of morality. It ended only when Epstein became more expensive to shield than to eliminate from the public narrative. By then, the network had already begun to shift, quietly distancing itself, sealing records, erasing connections, and preparing its own survival strategy. Because the truth was never really about Epstein, it was about the people behind him and the people he served. The cracks in Epstein's protection system did not begin with an elite whistleblower or a federal sting. They began with a single phone call in Palm Beach, Florida in 2005. A parent reported that a man in a mansion was paying underage girls for massage appointments. Local detectives expected a routine arrest. What they stepped into instead was a structure far larger than they understood. Witnesses, patterns, recruiters, a steady flow of girls, a well-rehearsed script repeated across interviews. Palm Beach police built a case methodically. They gathered sworn statements, surveillance, and corroboration. They prepared to charge Epstein with multiple felonies. Then the unexpected began. Attorneys from Washington appeared. Phone calls were made to people who never had reason to be involved in a local investigation. A line of high-powered lawyers formed around Epstein, names normally reserved for defending corporate empires, not a single individual. From that moment, the case stopped behaving like a criminal investigation and began behaving like a negotiation. The prosecutors were pressured. The detectives were sidelined. The evidence was minimized. And the victims, whose statements formed the backbone of the case, found themselves pushed to the edge of the process. The result became one of the most controversial plea deals in modern U.S. history. Instead of a trial, Epstein received a secret agreement. It shielded him from federal charges. It blocked additional prosecution. It protected unnamed potential co-conspirators. It was signed behind closed doors without informing the victims, an unprecedented breach of protocol. The sentence itself defied explanation. 13 months, in a private wing, with daily work release privileges, leaving the facility for hours at a time, unsupervised, returning at night. For Epstein, it wasn't punishment, it was inconvenience. For observers inside law enforcement, it was something else entirely. Confirmation that this was no ordinary defendant. But protection has limits. And in the years that followed, whispers grew louder, files resurfaced, journalists dug deeper, victims came forward, older, more determined, less willing to be silenced. The structure shielding Epstein had survived scrutiny once. It would not survive it again, because the first collapse didn't expose the full truth. It exposed something more dangerous, that someone had rewritten the justice process to protect a single man. And once that became undeniable, the system that had shielded him began to fracture, quietly at first, then publicly, then catastrophically. When the second collapse came, it wouldn't be local, it would be global. By 2019, Epstein's world was still intact on the surface. A private island, a private jet, a Manhattan mansion worth over $70 million, connections to billionaires, former presidents, royalty, intelligence officers. But underneath that stillness, something was shifting. Victims had grown up. Journalists had become relentless. The 2008 plea deal was no longer obscure. It was infamous. And the FBI, pressured by lawsuits and renewed public attention, reopened the case. The moment the investigation reignited, the protection that once insulated Epstein began to crack. His plane logs resurfaced, flight manifests leaked, old depositions reappeared. Witnesses who once stayed silent, by fear or by force, now spoke with clarity and precision. The myth of Epstein as a lone predator collapsed. The pattern that emerged was large, organized, and systematic. Recruitment networks across states, coordinated transportation, multiple properties designed for control, privacy, and leverage, and countless high-profile names woven into the background, some through association, some through direct allegations, others through unexplained proximity. The FBI moved quickly. On July 6, 2019, federal agents arrested Epstein at Teterboro Airport after he landed on his private jet. This time, there was no backroom deal, no quiet bargaining, no rerouting of charges. The indictment was severe: sex trafficking of minors, conspiracy, and a potential sentence that would keep him in prison for the rest of his life. Inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, Epstein waited. No mansion, no private wing, no work release, just a cell. Outside those walls, panic spread among people who once considered him a useful asset or a dangerous liability. Lawyers prepared. Public relations teams scrambled. Political advisors issued statements of distance. Old associates deleted photographs. Some former allies denounced him. Others disappeared from public view entirely. For the first time, Epstein faced something he had always avoided: a federal trial with global media attention and victims ready to testify under oath. And the risk was not limited to him. If he spoke, if he negotiated, if he tried to save himself, the collateral damage could reach the highest levels of business, politics, finance, and intelligence. The power structure surrounding Epstein had one weak point: Epstein himself. And then, suddenly, almost predictably, the unraveling ended, abruptly, permanently, because before Epstein could testify, negotiate, or reveal anything, the man at the center of the investigation was found dead, and the truth, once again, slipped into the shadows. The walls that once protected him finally began to collapse. Investigators, journalists, and survivors, long ignored, silenced, or disbelieved, united the scattered pieces of a puzzle too long hidden. Every flight log, every testimony, every whispered account painted a portrait of a man shielded by power, privilege, and fear. It was never just Epstein. It was the constellation of influence that orbited him, Billionaires who turned blind eyes, politicians who calculated silence as safety, intelligence operatives who weighed secrets as currency. Every connection, every favor, every unspoken agreement now lay bare under the unforgiving gaze of scrutiny. Even in exposure, some shadows persisted. The public saw fragments, the trials, the headlines, the guilty pleas, but the full scope of complicity remained veiled, an unsettling reminder of the forces that can manipulate justice. His empire was a mirror of power itself, glamorous on the surface, but corrupt and predatory at its core. And as the world grappled with the horror, the names that remained unspoken spoke louder than any courtroom confession. The story of Epstein is not merely the story of one man. It is a story of how wealth shields sin, how influence silences truth, and how the cost of hidden networks is measured in lives destroyed. In the end, the empire fell, but the questions linger, echoing in the halls of power long after the man himself was gone.
Declassified Ages, where history reveals its secret. Like, share, and subscribe.